Hi, everyone. Okay, so I will go over the parts that I found the most interesting first. So, the article that I found the most interesting was When Conflict Helps, because it takes a different approach to workplace conflict. The article highlighted different types of workplace conflict, like task conflict, relationship conflict, process conflict, and status conflict. Task conflict is when there are disagreements about the specific tasks that groups have to complete, while relationship conflict is more focused on the emotional tensions between these group members. Process conflict, on the other hand, deals with disputes over how a task is divided among team members. Status conflict involves the differences associated with members' comparative social standing within the group. This kind of reminded me of my job, where I think that we definitely have more task conflicts. For example, since we are dealing with immigration records and we are constantly having to come up with different ways to handle someone's case, we sometimes have different approaches, which can often bring up some tension. And I would say that this often happens with the most senior members, the director and the associate director, since they both have many, many years of experience in the field. They have very different approaches to tackling a student's case. So they would definitely get into task conflicts. But I think it's helpful because they definitely talk about it. They kind of speak about their different viewpoints and try and explain why um, they would handle the situation or the case the way that they would, and they would listen to each other. So I think it's definitely beneficial in that sense. The article also goes into information processing, which is the degree to which information, ideas, or cognitive processes are shared among group members. They then tie it into how it relates to cognitive load. So, the cognitive load is defined as the amount of information processing capacity that a task requires. Here, the more complex the task, the higher the mental load. So, when there is a team, they are able to share this cognitive load. So, no single person is handling it all on their own. And then, secondly, emotional regulation may facilitate beneficial conflict through decreasing oppositional intensity. So, this is where task conflict can benefit performance because when teams are disagreeing, they are communicating and they are able to talk about different solutions and then collectively come up with the best possible solution. And then the second article, that stood out to me was Individual and Organizational Factors Promoting Successful Responses to Workplace Conflict. The article argues that although workplace conflict can be a distressing occurrence, it is still important and relevant to human interaction. What I liked about this article was the part about having a balance between the self and others, because it highlights that when we are working in teams, we should be focusing on both ourselves and others when conflict arises. It also goes into the different attachment styles and how that shapes our interactions within the workplace, which I found pretty cool. Okay, so, what have you done when there has been conflict in a work group situation? So, in a work group situation, I usually try to figure out the root of the conflict so that I can better understand where it is coming from. So, I would try and get the viewpoints of everybody in the group so that I can understand where their heads are at and maybe how they are processing the information and how they're interpreting the information, of course. And then once I do that, I try to explain my own thought processes. At work, I would say that I am definitely the peacemaker because I prefer harmonious environments. So I would often suggest that we should try and use each person's viewpoint and then integrate that into our solution to whatever task that we may have. And then lastly, do you ultimately believe that conflict is beneficial within limits? Yes, I do believe that conflict can be beneficial because it means that people are talking, people are sharing their ideas more freely, and they are working towards finding the best possible solution to the problem. And I think that I find this better than having a group that does not share ideas, because in the end, when you're in a group that prefers not to talk or they don't have those kinds of conflicts, then sometimes nothing gets done. So when there's limited conflict, as long as it is more task-related conflict, people are able to be more creative. They are, of course, communicating with one another, and it can enhance problem-solving skills within the team. I also find that this can facilitate better relationships because group members are then able to understand one another better. They are made aware of each other's working styles and even their priorities. And then with all of those things, they can then build trust. So, yeah, thank you.